Hey everyone, and welcome to the second tutorial on Lightroom. This time I'm going to talk to you about white balance, what it is and how you can correct it once it's wrong. Um, the reason why white balance is important is because every single light source has a different color. If you think about, if you take pictures in artificial light, so let's say you have a light bulb on and you take a photo of your food, you probably notice that it looks very yellow. If you have tungsten light, it can look very green. It can look very yellow depending on the type of light. But even daylight, which is supposed to be neutral, has all sorts of different colors. So if you look at early morning light, tends to be a little bit bluish. Then the further on in the day, it gets more neutral. Again, depending on the day, if it's cloudy, if it's rainy, if it's sunny, there are so many variables. Everybody knows, sunset light is really yellow, which makes it really warm and inviting. But also, if you're trying to shoot food or any other object, then you'll notice that it's well, it might be a little bit too yellow. Now, if you have your camera on auto white balance, then your camera does actually do a pretty good job in correcting most of the issues. So in general, if you shoot scenes outside and especially when you're in daylight, then there's usually not a lot of issues with the light, but there are a few circumstances where it might be trickier. Now, so let's say you go to a restaurant and you want to take photos of your food, but you notice that once you come home, the photos look very, well, yellow or whatever other color cast the lights may have. Now you can actually correct that quite easily in Lightroom. Again, this is based on the fact that if you would shoot in RAW, you do have a lot of options in correcting your white balance. So in order to show you what you can do, I picked a couple of obvious issues with the white balance. So let's start with the most horrible one, which is this picture of lollipops, or popsicles, I should say. Um, well, this photo is taken outside in the shade on a sunny day. I don't know what time it is, but I can check. It was late in the day, so it was in June, and it was around 4 o'clock in the afternoon and in the shade. Now, what happens here is that the light looks, well, it looks very wrong because this is very bluish. I mean, if you look at the raspberries who are supposed to be red, even though they're frozen, it's, well, it just looks not the way you expect it to look. Now, there are a couple of ways you can change the white balance. Now, the first way to do it in Lightroom is if you go into the develop area here, you see here this little box which says white balance as shot, and then it gives you the temperature. So this, in this case, it's 4150, which stands for degrees Kelvin. And then it's the tint. I try not to mess too much with the tint because that's a tricky one. But with the temperature, it's fine to change it. So you can slide it to the left, and if you look at what happens to the color of the ice cream, it looks a lot better. I mean, it needs a little exposure adjustment, not too much. Back. Now, you see, it starts to look a lot more like the mango popsicles that they are, and your raspberries start to look a lot more natural than this. So that's one way to do it, just looking at it on the screen and thinking, okay, this is the way I want it to look. But it's always a bit tricky because is your screen calibrated correctly? I mean, there are so many things you have to keep in mind. Do you have, so for instance, I have a yellow wall at the moment in my office, not very handy, but that might actually have an effect on the way the photo looks on your screen. So you can do it that way, and if you're comfortable doing that way, that's all fine. But there are other ways to set the white balance. Now, one of the ways to do it is to use a gray card. Now, if you look at this picture, because I already knew This was going to be a tricky situation. I took one photo and I held my grey card in front of the subject, and I took a photo in the same circumstances. So that's one thing you have to keep in mind. If you do use a grey card, and you can buy grey cards online, or you can buy them through a Photoshop, and it's basically a neutral color grey. Now if you take a photo of the scene with your grey card in it, then make sure you have everything in the same lighting circumstances as you're gonna be using later on to correct your white balance, because that's really important. Now once you've done that, it's really simple, and I'm gonna actually put this one back. So let's say I want to correct this one now, because it's also, you can already see here by looking at the histogram also that there's a lot of blue involved. Now if I want to correct this, then I basically tell the computer what should be neutral gray. And you can already see here in the preview what happens if I hover over my gray card. So you can also see what happens if I hover over the other colors. See what happens in this area. See, it looks all the colors of the rainbow. This one is particularly interesting, bright neon green. Anyway, so if you hover over the gray card and you click on it, what happens is, ta-da, your computer will correct the scene for this to look neutral gray, and this is the color it should be. Sometimes it's a little off, so let's say you've angled your gray card a little bit wrong and it's hitting the light in a slightly different way from your subject, and that might still look different, but it's a very good starting point. And from here, if you think maybe it's a little bit too yellow, you can always tone it down a little bit. It's easier than in starting from your basically completely wrong picture, which is here. And if you look at the temperature here, it says 4,200, but once I click it, it's, well, it was, what was it, 9,100. See, if I click it again, it's 9,100. So that's almost double the temperature. So it's now a lot warmer, and it looks a lot more natural and realistic. So this is a very easy way to correct your white balance. Now, if all the photos that I've taken in the same circumstances, I can copy the settings. So what I can do now is I can copy, and then I do check none, and I only click the white balance, because that's at this point the thing I want to copy. I do copy, I go to this lovely picture, and I do paste. You see that it automatically corrects it to the same color temperature that the one with the gray card is the same. Goes for this one, it's also the same situation. So I can click it, and it takes, screen is not working. It's a circle of death spinning. But you can, I mean, let's go back. Oh, and it doesn't move anymore. So we can clearly see that it's a very, very simple way in correcting your white balance. Now, this particular photo I shot with artificial light, so I actually used studio flashes, and it was late at night. Not that that makes much difference when you're shooting with studio flashes. And studio flash, I kind of know from the top of my head what the white balance should be, so I can always correct it. Now what happens when you shoot darker colors, like for instance here, this is a wooden area, it's a copper bowl, and overall the colors are all very, very dark. What happens is that tends to throw your white balance off. The same happens when you shoot on black, comes out very blue. The same happens when you shoot on other I mean, red is a particularly difficult color to shoot, so if you have everything red in your scene, you'll notice that it might be completely off in color. But so it's easy to correct if you shoot with your gray card. Now another method to use is, if you look here and you click, you see that here the white balance is set as shot, but you can also put it to flash. which in this case kind of does the trick. Correct it a little bit. It might even be a little bit too yellow for my taste, so I turn it down a little bit. But you see that it immediately corrects it from here to here, making it look much more appealing and appetizing. So that's a very simple way of correcting your white balance in Lightroom. Thank you.